tonight on Reporting Scotland. The west coast of Scotland is battered by high winds and rain as a tidal surge threatens to flood homes and businesses.
My flood defences are holding up okay. I just hope that everybody else is as fortunate as I am. But the weather conditions are pretty horrendous.
A tidal surge and severe gale force winds have been battering western and southern parts of Scotland. There's been flooding along coastal areas with nearly 40 flood warnings in place at one point. In a moment we'll be reporting from Ayrshire. But first this from Laura Maxwell, who was further up the Clyde coast as the worst of the weather hit.
The front at Helensburgh felt the force of today's storm. The high tide, combined with strong winds, heavy rain and the storm surge, saw the pier and surrounding car parks almost completely submerged. The main road through the town was closed for periods, as locals did their best to protect their homes.
My flood defences are holding up okay. I just hope that everybody else is as fortunate as I am. But the weather conditions are pretty horrendous, and we still haven't peaked, I don't think, yet on the high tide.
Half an hour ago you could see the road here on the Esplanade in Helensburgh, but in that time it has completely flooded. Locals say this is the worst they've seen it in living memory. They've got their sandbags out and they're hoping for the best.
Preparations were well underway this morning before the surge hit. Council workers out in force, handing out sandbags and clearing drains.
We had the advantage of having the flood warnings in place yesterday, which allowed local authorities to make sure they had enough resource in place. And it is a matter for local authorities, but we are having feedback today from the local responders that they have done so in places like Argyll and Bute and Highland Council. They have taken appropriate steps.
Not everyone escaped though. Some businesses were caught in the flooding. Train services too were cancelled for a time as the seawaters crashed over the main Helensburgh line. And in Dumbarton, the River Leven had burst its banks even before high tide. This evening, most people are breathing a sigh of relief while keeping a close eye on the weather for the weekend. Laura Maxwell, Reporting Scotland, Helensburgh.
Winds at one point reached 68 miles an hour in some places. Severe gales combined with tidal surges affected ferries along the Clyde coast and also breached the sea defences. This report from Julie Peacock.
You didn't want to get too close to the coast in Ayrshire today. A deluge of water battered the seawalls in Ardrossan. No trains braved this line for a time. The parks and promenades of Ayrshire's seaside towns were strictly off limits. This is the worst flooding the area has seen in 2 decades. But it didn't stop people coming to see the storm unfold in front of them.
I think it's quite exciting, really. I think it's good, but it's not very good for cars and transport and people's houses and flooding. But I like a bit of the wildness of the sea.
In Troon, council workers were out patrolling since this morning, ready to clear drains and shore up homes with sandbags. But the tide turned before it reached these houses.
High tide's been and gone, thankfully, and this is the only road in Troon that has been affected. So the proactive plans that we put in place have certainly paid dividends, because thankfully no one's been affected, no properties have been affected.
Well, the high tide has just passed and the waters are beginning to recede, but it's certainly been a very windy and wild day today on the west coast of the country. Thankfully, the flooding has only been in some localised areas, but many people here in Troon have said this is the worst they've seen it in years, and there's a real sense of having a lucky escape.
The weather has disrupted many people's travel plans, but train and ferry services are getting back to normal. On the Isle of Arran, getting around hasn't been easy. Half a dozen roads remain closed there. But some people are making the most of the unsettled weather. These windsurfers may be glad to know more of it is on the way, even if conditions won't be as dramatic as today. Julie Peacock, Reporting Scotland.